Hello and welcome to episode 48 of Match It and the Other Guy. And as ever, Kevin and I are sitting outside my home on the banks of Lake Wylie in Charlotte, North Carolina on a very sunny Monday. Kevin, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm a little warmer again.
Yes.
The temperatures are starting to creep back up again for this week, it looks like. We had a nice run of cooler days, but we're in that time of year. It's going to be ebbing and flowing very much.
But I can sense the mornings are definitely a little bit cooler than they have
Our mornings
been.
are much, much better. Yes, the start of the day is great.
And one of my great treats down here on the lake is first thing in the morning, when it is cooler, is watching the wonderful wisps of mist flowing along the water, which I greatly enjoy. It's very atmospheric. And there were 2 days last week when that happened, the mist was back. So that's visual evidence to me that the temperature is changing.
Well, I'm sure it's quite serene at that time of morning,
It's
too.
absolutely
Very quiet and tranquil on the lake.
It's very beautiful, very calm. Yes, actually, I sat out here last night, well into the dark, and it was absolutely as still as a graveyard, as they say over in England. Like, there was no movement on the water. Typically, when the light reflects off the opposite side of the lake, from the houses on the opposite side of the lake over the water, you get that wonderful Van Gogh ripples of water, light through the water. But last night, the lines of light were almost laser straight. There was zero movement on the water. It was just like a mirror.
In the standard of that, a mill pond.
A mill pond, just like a mill pond.
I don't even know what a mill pond is, but I know that's the
I can
the standard
tell you.
of a tranquil water.
So a mill pond, typically in England, I would say anyway, is what happens is when you have a mill with a water mill wheel on the side of the mill for grinding whatever it would be you want to grind on the inside, you have a flume or a supply of water coming from the river or a brook or a stream that flows over the water wheel, and then from the water wheel it goes into the mill pond, pond where the water collects in the pond.
Oh, I've never known.
And then it flows away down into the river again.
It kind of stays and then slowly makes its way away so that others can fill it as it's continually coming.
Yes.
Okay.
At least that's
live and learn.
That's my understanding of a mill pond. And when you see old photographs of mills, typically you see that at the opposite side. At the exit side of the water wheel on a mill, you'll see a pond, and they are typically pretty still water. But we're not talking about that, are we? I'm just thinking, I'm guessing that's not our subject for today.
No, mill ponds and tranquil water probably won't get us very far.
So our gentle listener, and I never know what we're going to be talking about, although we have just been talking about windmills and, water wheels and mill ponds. Fill us all in then. What are we talking about today?
Well, quite often, we enjoy talking about entertainment and such genres of entertainment. Well, this is kind of part of that, and it kind of takes on its own accord and goes in a certain direction itself, is commercials. They're definitely a part of our evening's entertainment. Have been for decades, or even during the day or whenever. Now, granted, we fast forward through a lot of them these days with today's technology, but they were definitely a big part of growing up, and
for sure,
have actually long outlasted many of the shows as far as pop culture references and icons.
And some commercials live in memory and have been very successful, and some not so much. Of course, we always have to remember, we whenever we have our debates and our discussions about various subjects, that I grew up in England, you grew up here in the United States, and television was very different over in England than it is in the United States, where I would say the vast majority of our broadcasts over in England were supplied by the BBC, speaking on behalf of dear old Blighty. And BBC had no commercials, of course, but commercial TV did come in later. Be interesting, actually. I wonder how many of those commercials we remember as kids on opposite side of the Atlantic were in both countries at the same time.
Yeah, or if they were just the same type of thing recorded for the English market and recorded for the American market. Because, do you remember? Probably your voices had the same accents and stuff like that you had with the recordings over there.
Well, talking about commercials from kids, the one that, it's running through my mind now. I can hear this little 8 or 9 year old kid dressed up as a cowboy, and he was advertising Milky Bars, which was white chocolate bars of chocolate, and his great catchphrase was, "The Milky Bars are on me," and his commercials would be some sort of small 20-second adventure would happen to him in a Wild West setting, in which the Milky Bar Kid would come out as the hero, of course, and his closing line would always be, "The Milky Bars are on me," and everyone would celebrate with a ghastly piece of white chocolate, which
Ghastly.
didn't do it to me. Did the Milky Bar Kid exist over the United States?
I've never heard of the brand nor the cultural reference.
Okay, well there you are. Yes.
Was that a color commercial at that time, or was it a black and white?
I can't give you the answer to that because we only had a black and white TV for a long period
So
of
it
time.
pretty much was black and white in your house.
It most certainly was. Yes. So maybe it was in color. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, when I was born and stuff like that, when I remember all the commercials, were in color that I recall. You always see black and whites on like something looking back nostalgically, or great commercials of the '60s or something like that, or '50s and stuff.
Yes.
But
the other one that springs to mind now, you're thinking about black and white commercials, and I've written about this. I was thinking about when I was writing my short story, Fragments from France, about Mr. Goodman. It was a chap that I knew. I mentioned him several times. My short story about the First World War, the Great War, and Mr. Goodman was explaining to me when I was a young kid of 10 about the horrors of trench warfare. But he always used to have in his pantry, the larder, the cold room of the house. It wasn't a fridge or a freezer; it was just a colder room. He used to have 2 bottles of Davenport's beer on what we would call I think it was called the Thrall. And the only time I ever used that word thrall was to describe like a granite or a stone shelf in the pantry, which would be cold just because it was stone.
Yeah,
and
just
so
stay cold.
it would, yes, and that's effectively all there was to keep things fresh, really. And if you wanted to keep things as cool as possible, you put them on the Thrall shelf. But I always remember Mr. Goodman having 2 bottles of Davenport's beer on the Thrall in his pantry, and they came from a company called Davenport's, but their great commercial was "Beer at home means Davenport's," and they would drive round in a delivery van and deliver beer in the same way that the milk float would come round and drop pints of milk off.
well, there you go.
So there you go. Yeah. There's 2 from England. How about you in the States?
Oh, we had hundreds, well, thousands and more, I'm sure, that we can think of. But, growing up, as a kid, you tend to watch the kids' shows and cartoons and such like that. So naturally, we had a lot of morning breakfast cereal commercials.
Yes.
Oh gosh, you're Tony the Tiger for Frosted Flakes.
I remember him, yeah.
The Trix Rabbit. Tricks are for kids.
Yes. Now, tricks are for kids. Silly Rabbit, tricks are for kids. I never knew the origin of that reference beyond watching Kill Bill, Tarantino's film Kill Bill, Volume 1. And if I remember right, it was Lucy Liu's character, Oran Ishii, says to Uma Thurman's character, "Silly Rabbit." And I think Uma Thurman's character, who we later learn in Volume 2 is called Beatrix, says tricks are for kids. And it was lost on me, and I didn't know what to make of it until you explained it to me. It came from the cereal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And until we find out that her name is Beatrix in the second one,
Yeah.
it's just a odd thing in the first one. It's fun, but you're like, why?
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
he brings it around. Tarantino has that talent.
Yes, because in Volume 1, Tarantino, whenever any of the characters refer to Uma Thurman, who is at that point just referred to as the bride,
Exactly.
He beeps it out, right? They go to say Beatrix.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they put a beep over the
I need
top
to
of
watch
it.
it again. It is one of my favorites that he did.
I like that film a lot, and I think that works very well. I like the film. I mean, we're getting off subject already, but I particularly like that interaction between Lucy Liu and Uma Thurman, and their culminating fight scene in that snow outside the back of the restaurant where all that chaos has just happened with the Crazy 88 gang being decimated. But that particularly very quiet, tranquil scene, snowy scene with a little piece of bamboo that fills up with water and keeps toppling over. Blip, blip.
Thunk, thunk.
Yes. Yeah.
Thunk, thunk.
Yeah, exactly that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess, and I don't know this for fact, but I'm going to guess that Tarantino is paying homage to some other 1970s martial arts movie.
I'm sure.
Right? I bet that scene has been borrowed from somewhere else. Would be my guess.
He's probably watched thousands of hours of them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but back to commercials. Yeah, so there we are. Silly Rabbit Tricks are for kids. Yeah. I never knew the reference of that one. What other commercials stand out with you?
Well, I mean, then you got the ones that just were big cultural things, like, and they would keep returning with the same character. I mean, again, you being over there and us being, you may have not ever heard of Mr. Whipple for Charmin. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He was the store clerk that kind of had just the mustache, kind of the receding hairline, and glasses. And the ladies would always be in there and wanting to squeeze the Charmin because it was so soft, and he was always getting on to them. Please don't squeeze the Charmin. And it ran for a long time with just different it'd be like in the aisle, it might be at the checkout, and he'd pop in, please don't squeeze the Charmin. So I mean, this is kind of stuff that would end up on a T-shirt. At some point, somebody would have a T-shirt that said, "Please don't squeeze the Charmin" or such. But
it is noteworthy or remarkable, perhaps, that it just takes the right tagline that'll just sit there in your brain for years and years and years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where's the beef? You've certainly heard Where's the Beef.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was early 80s. It might have been late 70s. I think it was early 80s. And Clara Peller was the little old lady that said it. It became such a big deal. I still even know the name of the actress.
Yeah.
And of course, she's long departed us, but that one was definitely all over T-shirts and everything like that. One actually had a kind of effect on me in kind of, I guess, a negative way. And I've never been a big McDonald's fan. I just never have been. They had a campaign out. Okay, so I'm in class in the middle of, like, we're supposed to be doing a project, working on our addition sheet or something like that we've been handed. I jump up, scream, "I'm having a Big Mac attack," and ran out of the room and down the hallway. What possessed me or whatever. But, you can imagine it didn't end well for me. But
well done you for pulling it off.
I just did it. There you go. So, and that was, of course, the commercial of the Big Mac attack back then. And then, what is it? They had the song about the 2 all-beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
I do vaguely remember that. Yes,
And the counteract, I think it probably around that same time-ish, was the counteract from Burger King, which was "Have It Your Way."
Yeah.
Because their thing was, you don't have to get it the way that they've laid it out for you. You come into Burger King, you order any way you want it. And there was that, "Have it your way, have it your way" song. And
that was well delivered, by the way, Mr. Field.
They may have a new career.
Yeah, I'm far from expert on commercials, of course, but I've worked in TV for 21 years, so I've certainly been around them and seen a fair few of them, as we all have. But, I am always amazed that some commercials work so well, and others, I watch the commercial or I hear the commercial on the radio, and at the end of it, I'm still completely lost of what we're advertising.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the
which strikes me
the sign of a horrible commercial is you can't remember what the product even is.
That's exactly right. If the commercial is memorable, but I don't know what it's advertising, something has gone wrong, hasn't it?
And it actually had the opposite effect on my mom. She would be like, "Oh, I just hate those commercials for XYZ."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Mom, they've done their job. You're sitting here talking to me about brand XYZ.
Yeah.
And they've actually definitely done what they set out to do. You may not buy it, but other people are going to."
Yeah. So. Yes, I don't know. Maybe it's just old school, but I'm a big believer. If you're selling, it doesn't matter. We'll call it brand A. Just keep mentioning brand A and a telephone number and over again. And there's one. I'm not going to mention the name, but there's one for a finance company who would like to give you trade in a policy for money. And
I'm sure I know which one you're talking about.
And you can't. It works so well because it's just the name and a number, and a number, name and a number. That's how to do a commercial. You can't forget it. You can't forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, and some campaigns just go for. I mean, I was thinking about this one when I was thinking about this topic. I think that Energizer Bunny has been going for 35 years or something along those lines. I remember like when it was like 10 years going, that thing is still going, in their commercial line. And I need to look it up and see when they actually started, but I'm thinking it was mid to late 80s the first time. And good gosh, what a run.
Some of them, you're right, some commercials work very well and some don't. And I always like to watch, again, don't want to mention any names, that's not what we're here for, but some of the insurance companies where they have that returning cast of characters.
Yeah.
I'm happy to watch them. Just you become familiar with them and you want to know what they're going to do next. I like that idea.
And some of them will change it up to where it's not the same thing, but it's still as clever, if not more, than the last one, and it's got your interest. Generally, insurance is not the most exciting thing out there that's going to get you all wound up. But
the one I think certainly I'm thinking of, but the one we're probably all thinking of, starts off with there was one female character, and then she is joined by another one, and then I think the cast is up to like 4 or 5 of them now. But you still know who they are. You're looking out for them in the next commercial.
It's almost its own show with its own episodes.
That's exactly right. And I think well done them for doing that. It works very well. Yeah.
I think our local geese are very vocal today.
They certainly are. Yeah. I guess we're at that.
They might be flying south.
I was just about to say that we're at the time of the year where they are beginning to group together in preparation for leaving us.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, there was, I think, everybody kind of looks on their childhood era as the kind of a golden era and stuff like that. But the commercials were they were a lot of fun, I think, back then. We had a whole Reese's thing, Reese's Cups.
Yes.
And the whole thing, they ran a whole one where somebody would end up colliding, and it's like, you got your peanut butter on my chocolate. You got your chocolate in my peanut butter. And they both, it tastes great. The two tastes that taste great together or something like along those lines. So that was a big campaign, late 70s, somewhere in there too. And then we had, there were so many that were, in the prime time, you got a lot of celebrity commercials. I remember the guy, I think it was Robert Conrad, I think was the actor's name. He starred in the Baba Black Sheep show. He had the thing, I think it was a Duracell battery. And he was, supposed to be a tough guy. He's like daring you to knock it off his shoulder.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't remember much of the gist of that one, but I remember that. I'm pretty sure it was Robert Conrad was the actor. I think, and then you had the ones for American Express had the was it Jimmy Durante or somebody along those lines.
All right.
Promoting the American Express card. I can't remember if it was him for sure. It might have been him or Jack Klugman. So you always had the celebrity commercials, which were kind of a big deal too. Did y'all remember having any?
I do remember the famous Coca-Cola commercial. I would like to teach the world to sing. I think
that was probably a
worldwide thing. Yes,
I think it goes down as being one of the greatest single ads of all time.
I have a feeling we the Brits must have if you like inherited that commercial from the United States.
And wasn't it shown at Christmas time?
My memory is it was shown. There were several versions of it throughout the year. I mean, there seemed to be groups of people singing it on the top of cliff tops and in flowing open meadow scenes, But I do remember that one being around for a long while, being very successful.
That was a very good one. That was the 70s, I'm pretty sure, when that premiered. And let me take this full around. I did remember who did the American Express was Carl Malden, the actor, and he was in he starred in the Streets of San Francisco show and some other things.
Yeah,
that's who that was.
All right.
But you remember those celebrity endorsers?
I imagine our gentle listeners out there thinking, I was just about to write into Kevin and tell him the answer.
No, that's who it is. But the Coca-Cola, of course, Coca-Cola's had some great commercials during the line. I remember one, and I'm thinking this was probably about 30 years ago, and it was kind of a neat idea. It would be like January, and they would say, "We'd like to interrupt your winter for some great memories of summer," and they show water skiing and sunbathing and the water parks and amusement parks and all that, and of course, tying in the Coke drink.
Oh, okay.
And then in the middle of summer, they'd say, "We'd like to remind you of some great winter moments." It'd be like July, and you're sweltering, and they're showing snow skiing and gondola rides and ice skating and all that. So
see, when they work, and
I still remember. Obviously,
it doesn't have to be a complicated setup to make a commercial work, does it? It just needs to be memorable.
Yeah.
But again, you not only need to remember the commercial, you need to remember the product that's behind it. Right?
Yeah. And I think the beer companies probably had it's still to this day have some of the best. But I remember the ones back there. There was the taste great, less filling Miller Lite commercials,
Okay, right.
where one side was tastes great, no, let's fill it, no,
Yeah.
tastes great. Remember, I think the baseball announcer Bob Uecker might have been in those.
Yeah.
But throughout the years, those were some of the fun. The Stroh's, the dog that would go to the refrigerator and bring back a Stroh's for its owner and stuff like that.
Now, educate me here, because of my relatively brief time in the United States. I know that the Super Bowl commercials are always talked about and have become famous over the years. To your knowledge, has that always been the case for as far back as you can remember, that Super Bowl commercials were always something a little more special?
As far as I know, now granted, I just didn't watch the Super Bowls back in the day. I couldn't tell you anything. Dad was not a huge football fan either. I don't remember ever watching. I'm sure they were very important and had prime time. Whether or not they made a lot for that airing, or whether they were like, well, we're buying a slot, we're going to slip in our, Chevrolet Impala ad that we've been running for a month in a time slot and pay for it. I'm not sure when they started being where it was a major event for the commercials to be inserted. And you looked for them. I know you got to go back to where they consider it to be one of the greatest Super Bowl commercials was the introduction of the Macintosh computer, and it very much tied into 1984.
I remember I know exactly the commercial.
And everybody's kind of in there being pretty much
indoctrinated. Yes,
indoctrinated.
Yes, it's that sort of in the book 1984 and copied into the movies as well. It was known as the 2 minutes hate. Everybody gathered together and looked at the screen, and they were indoctrinated with something. And I know exactly the scene that you're setting up there with that Apple computer.
Yep, I mean definitely that might have been kind of when things were kind of amping up to be where it was an event and a big deal. And people noticed after that, and started making changes in how they did the commercials for that. Made them. Some of them were mini movies,
Absolutely.
They had major directors doing a lot of them from that point on.
Yeah.
So you started seeing some big changes, and I'm sure the money flowed accordingly.
Well, I'm always a sop for an emotional tie, and the one Super Bowl commercial that I remember that always pulls at my heartstrings is the Budweiser Dre Horse commercial.
Yeah.
The one I'm thinking of, and I'm sure they've done many, is the horse trainer that is obviously training one of the Dre horses, and it always springs to mind because of the connection. In a previous episode, we've talked about my dad and particularly my granddad's love of horses and dray horses. So whenever I see dray horses, it always makes me think of granddad. But in this particular Budweiser spot, there is a chap that's training dray horses to pull the Budweiser beer for an event, and trains the horse, and the horse goes away to the event, and the trainer goes to the event to watch what's happening, to watch his horse in action, and the horse seems to be ignoring him and more involved with what's happening, pulling the cart, pulling the dray, and afterwards, of course, is that emotional meetup where the horse runs towards him.
He kind of breaks loose at the end from his before he gets loaded in the trailer and comes.
Yeah, that does it for me.
Yeah, that's pretty much I think the best one of those. Especially on that side of it. But it definitely is a good one. Now another one. They did so many of those. Of course that one was very heartfelt and touching.
Right.
They also did one. I don't know if you recall the one with the Dalmatian dogs. Because
now you've said that,
there's always a Dalmatian on the cart.
Okay,
it's tradition.
Okay,
and this one was it started off with a guy coming looking at a litter of puppies, Dalmatian puppies.
Okay.
Well, he picks one, and as he's walking away, the Dalmatian puppy's kind of like looking back over his shoulder, and he looks at the others and sticks his tongue out. Like, and then later, one of them is picked up by the Budweiser team.
Okay.
And is taken, and then later on, he is riding on the Budweiser cart, and on the sidelines is the original dog that got taken, and he just kind of looks at him and goes, nah, and sticks his tongue out.
There you go.
So hopefully, I hope they'll continue with those. I can't remember if they had one this year or not, but hopefully they'll keep the tradition going.
Yeah. Did you ever get involved in any way with marketing and commercials?
Yeah, actually, I did.
Yeah.
I worked in advertising for a few companies.
Okay, yeah.
The one right out of college was Goody's Family Clothing.
Yeah, I thought there was a connection there with you in advertising.
And especially at that time, because I was in graphic design at school, and that's what I got my degree in. But when I kind of came on, I was an intern. And they needed me in wherever they needed me, I was there.
Yeah.
Like, you may be working on this week, you may be working on this that week. But we did one full week where we were filming a commercial in Knoxville at a bed and breakfast. It was secluded enough to where it was kind of quiet and away from the traffic and hustle and bustle. And we rented the bed and breakfast to film these commercials all week. And as you probably know from being on TV at all, there's a lot of hurry up and wait in that world.
Oh, boy, is there ever.
So we were there all day, every day for a week, and we'd film this spot, and we had the same actress who was kind of our spokesman for that era.
Okay.
Not that we named her or anything like that or anything, but she would just be in all the commercials, so you kind of got used to seeing her.
Right, yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. I mean, you learned tricks of it. We did some where we were filming outside on the patio, and I remember them wetting down the bricks with water so they glistened, and didn't look so drab. So they didn't look wet particularly, but they looked like they were bright.
Yes.
And stuff like that. And one of the funniest one was, we were supposed to be filming the scene outside where it was the family. She was the mom, and they had actors playing the other parts of the family. And they were supposed to have had homemade ice cream. Well, the one guy that goes to the store, he brings back Neapolitan ice cream, which had the 3 different things in it. And I'm looking at this going, we can only use one of these colors. You can't make Neapolitan ice cream out of your home churn, So I'm like, well, pick one and go with that. But we had a lot of fun, and I still remember that there was one scene we were filming, and the director, he was a pretty nice guy and stuff. Got to know him through the week, and he had a whole direction of how it was going. It was a closet scene where she kept on throwing clothes up on top of the husband, getting rid of her old clothes, and you couldn't even see him. He was covered in clothes. Or something along those lines. And I remember saying, would it be better if we did it this way where this happens? And the director kind of looked at me and goes, I like that idea.
There you go.
And we ended up filming my idea. And back then, you didn't have all this handy videotape. Well, you had videotapes, but I don't have that commercial anywhere. I don't know where it ended up. But,
boy, I bet you wish you did.
Yeah, it'd be nice
I'd love to see it.
To look back on.
Yeah.
Yeah, beyond that, occasionally they would use us. I remember one time we were having some big sale, and they had all of us go to the studio where they did our editing and just wanted us to run back and forth because it was showing a stampede of people going to the big sale.
Yeah.
So we're all just, our shoes and our bottom of our pant legs were coming across back and forth the whole ad department. But yeah, it can be a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work, that's for sure.
I bet it is a lot of work to get it. Again, I keep saying this, you've got to get it right. But in a commercial, you have such a limited amount of time to get your message over that it isn't just a matter of what you say in that commercial. It is. You just mentioned the glistening brickwork.
Yeah.
It's all those little details that have got to be right because you have such a small period of time to get that message over. Remember this. It's not easy, is it?
Yeah, and it's kind of akin to having the noises here since we're always film or record outside.
Yeah.
We never know. I remember that week too. There was some construction going on nearby, and one of our guys got in the car and drove around to the construction workers. He probably paid them something. He said, "Look,
go away.
2 hours. Just stop for 2 hours. Not making any hammering noises or whatever."
Yeah.
And we got to get some filming done, and they cooperated. So.
Well,
you're always that lucky, but
we always said from episode 1 of Matchett and the Other Guy that we would just sit out here, and the occasional episode when we're inside cooking, but beyond that, we just sit out here, and whatever noises we get are the noises we get, and our gentle listener has been very kind to us and just accepted that. But we said we're not going to do any editing, and whatever noises you hear, you're going to hear. Yeah, I think.
Well, and so far we've been a lot like PBS and BBC. We've been commercial free.
That's we have. Yeah. Well, it was an interesting conversation. Well, they're all interesting conversations with you, Kevin. I must say, it always sparks memories of things that I'd completely forgotten about. Yes, but yes, it's interesting that those little commercials that we're so used to them now. We almost, again, it's easy to say we ignore them, but you have to, when that message works, they will stick there. But yeah, we just mentioned the fact that there are some that we can remember from childhood, and for me that's 50 years ago.
Yeah.
I can remember some of those commercials. So they work, and when they work very well.
And far outlasted some of the shows they were actually aired in. Some of those shows
without
were
question, yeah.
long forgotten
Yeah.
and never to be resurrected.
Yeah. And of course, it's easy to say, well, what are the ones that it didn't work for? Well, you can't remember them.
No.
You know, you only really remember the ones that did work because they did work. But the ones that were ineffectual, they've gone. You don't know what they were.
Off into the ether.
Off into the ether. A bit like we should think about being off into the ether at the end of this episode. How about that for a little segue?
There you go.
Yeah. Gentle listener, thank you very much for joining us. And do join us again for another episode of Matchett and the Other Guy. Bye for now.
We'll see you then.
Yeah.
Thanks.